Hey everyone, welcome to the Rugger. My name is Nate. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how the results went with the provinces last weekend. One of them will be a bit more of an in-depth account because I was actually there for the Leinster game. It was my first time in the Aviva, so it was really exciting. But to kick things off, we had Ulster against Racing 92 on the Friday night. It was a pretty confident victory, 61 points to 7 for Ulster. So they are tipping right along. The Challenge Cup seems to suit them. I know it's a bit of a demotion because they were in the Champions Cup last year, but I think they're right where they're supposed to be. This is a great way for them to grow as a team. And I keep saying, these Ulster players, we need more of them on the national squad. And I think you could see that was apparent because Andy Farrell was actually at that game in the stands. And whenever the head coach is doing something like that, that's a signal to say, hey, your club is gaining traction, getting impressed here. So it was great to see him in person at the game up in Belfast, looking at how they were doing. So yeah, congrats to Ulster. And then on the Saturday we had Leinster versus the Harlequins. So I always wanted to go to the Aviva, but of course ticket prices for Ireland games can be pretty high. But this is a really good way to see a lot of the players from the national team without having to pay for an Ireland ticket, because obviously a lot of them come from Leinster. So I was at one of the surrounding area, had a bunch of pubs, obviously. I was a little bit disappointed because there wasn't really a dive bar kind of rugby bar. They're all quite posh. It's a very expensive neighborhood around there in Ballsbridge. So I went to the place called Slattery's, and it was a really good place to kind of perch and watch the Bordeaux Bulls game while I was waiting for the Leinster game. And on my way out, there I saw this guy who was sitting on the windowsill, and I could see he was wearing a Harlequins cap. And I was like, oh, hey, how you doing? Good luck to Harlequins. And he was just, oh, thank you very much. Please go easy on us. Have a heart kind of thing. So I think he knew his team was in for a bit of a rough ride. But to be fair, Harlequins really did keep up with Leinster for pretty much the majority of the game. It wasn't until the last quarter that Leinster did that thing with kind of like the All Blacks, where they just pull away and start piling on the points. So it was my first time in the Aviva. I was really interested to see what would happen because obviously, you see it on TV, all those helicopter views. And I was surprised that actually inside I wouldn't say it's quite ordinary, but it was just, it's a very regular looking kind of, venue for food and drinks. There's not much color. It's quite granite. It looks like, a lot of the original stadium is in there, because when you see from the top of the Aviva, it's got this Waterford crystal, really fancy, deluxe-y kind of shape to it. And I was just expecting something just a little bit more, I don't know, souped up inside. But it just seemed like it was kind of any other stadium in that regard. Just kind of, I suppose the color scheme for me, it was just gray all over. And then you have like the food stands and things. So I was a bit surprised at that, but it was a great atmosphere. Loads of Leinster fans, even though it wasn't nearly full, heaps of Leinster fans everywhere, and Harlequin fans as well. So I was sitting right up at the front in the middle. I kind of really kind of splashed out a bit because I wanted to make sure this time I want to make the most of it because I'm up in Dublin, and you could really see the players right up close to you. And it was great because when you're not even the nosebleeds, but just even kind of halfway between the nosebleeds and right up front, you can't hear anything. But when you get a seat up front, you can really hear the stuff that you can't normally hear on TV, like the real grunting and just the real kind of the fighting that they're doing with each other, the yelling that they're doing to each other. Like hearing Tyke Furlong scream at his team was great. They were getting really stuck in, like loads of like rucks forming in front of me. Dan Sheehan doing lineouts in front of me for the first half. So it was brilliant to see that up close. And it is worth the extra bit of cash if you really want to get that HD effect of really being there in the thick of it. So yeah, it was quite exciting. Leinster, I suppose they didn't have the most clinical of performances, but there was some really great moments. There was a great grubber kick from Tommy O'Brien in the second half, I think it was, when he just pretty much did a grubber kick and scored from it. And then you had Sam Prendergast, who did a beautiful cross kick to Jordan Larmour, who had a great game, who got player of the match, and that was for a second try. So yeah, it was terrific. Really good fun. And of course, everybody was waiting for Rico Ioane to come on. This guy has been the pantomime villain of the narrative of Ireland-New Zealand rivalry for the last couple of years now, since that spat with Johnny Sexton. So I was really interested to see, but you could hear even before he came on with about 20 minutes to go. Leinster started pulling away, scoring the tries. but you could hear like whispers of his name, up and down through the crowd and everything. And there was definitely hype to it, which is great. And once he came on, he got a huge warm reception, which is great to see. Just seemed to wash away all that kind of nonsense from before, the kind of slagging between the two teams, which you're going to get, and which is always in good fun. But he just seemed to click straight away. He seems to have been ingratiated to the Leinster team. He did some great passing. Straight away, he was getting stuck in. And he could have probably scored that try that he passed to Jimmy O'Brien, but he passed it to him instead, just to show, I suppose, that he is a team player and he wants to get off on the right foot. So well done to Rico. It's great to have him on the Leinster team. Keeps things really exciting when you have a player like that from the All Blacks. Any player from the All Blacks we have, we're really lucky to get. So I'm going to wish him luck and hope that he does well. After the game, when the whistle was blown, the people that were sitting in front of me, again, we're very up close now, they were clearly New Zealand fans living in Dublin, because I don't imagine, how much of a diehard Kiwi fan you are, or Rico fan. Would you really fly all the way from New Zealand to watch a club game in Dublin? But these guys, they had their New Zealand flag out after the whistle was blown. They're trying to get Rico to come over. Unfortunately, they didn't notice him. It would have been a great photo op for them. But it was just great to see. And I was looking around trying to see some other kind of New Zealand flag, but there's none. They were the only people in the whole stadium that had a New Zealand flag for Rico, giving them, the support from home. So it was great to see that. So yeah, that was Leinster versus the Harlequins. It was 45-28. So big difference to when they last played them. That was in the closing stages of the last Champions Cup, in one of the knockout stages, where it was 50-0. It was a real blitz from Leinster. So you can see that was not the case. Their defense is not the same that it was then, but still good takeaways to come from. And it was the first time, the main Leinster team were really back and flowing together. So a lot of work-ons there, but still good to get the win. So after that, I stayed in the neighbourhood and went back to that place, Slattery's, to have a look at the Munster game. I must have been the only Munster supporter there. All the Leinster fans were waving their Leinster flags at the TV screen when Munster were playing Bath in Bath. And a bit of a mockery, but I thought it was funny. You could really feel the rivalry when, it's in this pub just down the road from, the Aviva, this Dublin hotspot. You can feel like the simmering kind of competitiveness there, from the Leinster fans who were basking in their victory from the Quins. So, yeah, it was not great for Munster, unfortunately. Tadhg Beirne gets a yellow card. He infringes on a maul in the very kind of opening, well, not opening shots, but in the first quarter, we'll say. And Bath just win the game right there. This is the second time now it's happened where you take Tadhg Beirne out of the equation and you see what a big difference it is. I'm thinking back to the All Black game in Chicago, where he was taken off and all hell broke loose. Trying to kind of triage that game without him, because he is such a great player. He's probably Ireland's best player right now. So unfortunately, yeah, it's 40 points to 14. Bath just run rampant in the space of 20 minutes. They scored 28 points, which is a record for the Champions Cup. So fair play to Bath. Another record that's not good for us Munster fans is that was the biggest deficit loss for Munster in the last 30 years, which when I first heard, I was pretty surprised, because it's like 26 points. Okay, it's not great, but it's not a shellacking like 50-0 or something. So I was surprised that the margin was that small for their biggest loss, but not a good statistic, unfortunately. So there are work-ons there. Munster's set piece just wasn't great. The line out, the scrum. It was absolutely bucketing in that game. I'm surprised, actually. I felt like it was going to get cancelled, because it was just, turning into a swimming pool on that pitch. But Bath did the research. Jack Crowley was definitely missed, but I'm not going to, put the defeat at, his absence. It's a team game, and yeah, it just seems like it's a step back for Munster. So hopefully they can get their act together for the next game. So that was Bath against Munster, and then you had the Ospreys against Connacht, which is a really bizarre game. I didn't watch this live, but I watched it afterwards. It was just very weird. I think what happened was, obviously, Connacht lost the run of themselves, and I think the opening half was so good that they kind of gassed themselves out a bit. So remember, this is still a teething team as well, with a new coach, with Stuart Lancaster, and I think they had great attack in the first half. Really showed what happens when you have Stuart Lancaster as a coach, because he's just so good in attack. He was a great attacking coach for Leinster. So it just seemed that they kind of had this really good opening salvo of 40 minutes and then just kind of got knackered. So it's a step back for Connacht as well, unfortunately. Ospreys just eke it out in the second half. Connacht can't get 1 point in the second half. So there was a try at the very death of the first half and just made it 5 points on the board. And that made all the difference in the end. There's a really dubious last try from the Ospreys that really looked like it was 2 forward passes in a row. So I suggest if you haven't seen it, watch it back, watch the highlights on YouTube or something. But I was very surprised it wasn't looked at a bit more closely. And then when they did, the angle was dubious. It wasn't the best angle to look at, but even just from the first angle when it was first scored, it just looked like 2 forward passes in a row. So I think they kind of got lucky there. But still, for Connacht to let that lead go, bit of work to be done. It was a point a minute for the first quarter. They were just doing so well. So unfortunate for Connacht. So yeah, those were the games. Now this weekend, we've got Leicester versus Leinster. So Leinster are playing away. That's at 8 o'clock tonight. And yeah, I think that would be, you would think that would be Leinster's win. But, still you feel like they have a lot of work on to do. Now there's a really good squad coming in for this game. And Harry Byrne has been picked for the opening fly half. And that's great because now, hopefully, Harry Byrne's been having a very interesting season. If he can get back in the conversation between Jack and Sam, I think it would be just so good for the game. Really keep, those guys working hard on their form and their talent. Delighted for Harry Byrne to get this opportunity. He has been looking good. And Andy Farrell has been mentioning him before in recent press conferences, like he's saying to the journalists, don't forget about Harry Byrne. He's in the conversation too. He's been doing great. So best of luck to him. Rico Ioane will be starting this time, so that's also great to hear. He'll be in the starting 15 as a centre with Robbie Henshaw. So this is probably the best Leinster team that's been put out since the new season has started. It's really looking like a very dominant squad. You got Jimmy O'Brien at fullback, Tommy O'Brien for the wing. You've got Rico, you got Robbie, James Lowe, you got Harry Byrne, James Gibson Park. These are guys on the national team. Paddy McCarthy's going to be playing with his brother Joe. Joe McCarthy's back now, so it's just really exciting to see him back for Leinster. He's such a great player for Ireland and Leinster. Ronan Kelleher, Tyke Furlong. James Ryan's ban is up now from that red card against South Africa a few weeks back, so he's back in the mix. And then you have that very stable back row, Jack Cohen and Josh Van der Fleer and Caelan Doris. So it's looking like a very slick first 15. So yeah, we'll see how they get on. And then tomorrow we've got Munster against Gloucester at 5:30. So you really would think, well, I don't know much about Gloucester, but you think like Munster needs to get a win back here. They need to get back on their kind of running form that they had in the opening couple of months of the URC. They were doing so good and they were undefeated until that game against the Stormers, which was close. So Jack Crowley will be back for this game, which is good news. And he'll be doing his halfback pairing with Craig Casey. I always think they're fantastic together. And then Michael Alalatoa, he is back. He's on loan. I think he's only on a 6-month kind of assignment with Munster at the moment as a prop. Now, he used to play for Leinster as a prop, so it'll be interesting how he does. Tyke Byrne is going to be the captain again. And you got people in the back row like Gavin Coombs, and Tom Ahern now has been moved from lock to the back row. So I don't think I've ever seen him play in the back row before. Or maybe I haven't, just didn't notice, but I've always thought of him as a lock. So yeah, be interested how they get on. For me, I think Edwin Adogbo being back in the conversation, being back in the mix for Munster can only be good. He's just waiting to really burst onto the national team. I think he's great. I think he's just, very athletic guy, really brings great pace to the game, scored a great try last week against Bath. He's one of the shining lights in that game, which was a dark game for Munster. So yeah, great to see him back with the pack. And then you got Connacht against the Black Lions. They're a Georgian club at 8 o'clock on Saturday. Unfortunately, this is the same time as the Ulster game against Cardiff. So if you want to watch both, you would probably be bopping between the two like myself. It's a much changed up squad for Connacht. They've got Hugh Gavin, Carl Ford, and Shane Bolton, a few the regular faces, but a lot of the others, they're kind of newer faces. The other older, more veteran players have been taken off. So we'll see how they get on. I probably will end up watching the Ulster game more than the Connacht one, just because I'm excited to see Tom Stewart. He's going to be captain for the first time for Ulster. Great player for Ulster. And you got people like Zach Ward, Tom O'Toole, And on the bench, you've got Angus Bell, the Australian international. So it's great to see us getting a great player like that for Ulster. And Cormac Izujuku as well is back from injury. So it's another great story about a player coming back off of injury and being put on the bench to see what they can do. I think Cormac as well is destined for the national team. He's just a great player. So yeah, those are our games for the weekend. Best of luck to all the provinces. Some other news. So this is kind of more of a rumor, but I have seen it in a couple of feeds that Ireland are thinking about getting a referee for their coaching team. So this was first thought up, I think, with Fabien Galtier, the coach for France, to put a ref on your coaching team recently. And it's a very smart idea because if anything, Ireland need help with their discipline. That South Africa game showed that. We had 5 cards in one game. It was like a record for Ireland. So that is a work on that needs attention straight away. So it'd be great if they could get a coach on the team just to really show them, I suppose, tidy up that discipline, waterways around, think what's a way to circumvent certain plays, making sure, you're protecting your players from those cards because it can just nuke a game. So it'd be interesting to see if that becomes from a rumor and gets converted to proper facts in the next few months, but we'll see. Who would be the coach, or who would be the referee? South Africa have Jaco Piper, who's one of my favorite refs before he went for the Springbok job. So you would think, would it have to be an Irish referee? Could it be any referee? Would Andrew Brace be a person in contention there? So I don't know, but we'll see. In more local news, last night I went to the Rugby Pod guys, that is Andy Good and Big Jim from the Rugby Pod podcast. They came to the Radisson Blue in Limerick. I was lucky enough to get a ticket at the last minute. They were doing a kind of show there, but it wasn't just them, also a bunch of other speakers as well. Loads of Munster supporters. It was in conjunction with the Young Munster Rugby Football Club. So it was really exciting to be at that in the Radisson and see them do their thing. They're really funny guys, especially Andy Good. Used to be a player for England back in the 2000s. It's a very famous pod. It's actually probably one of the oldest rugby pods that I can think of. It's 10 years old now, so I think they could be kind of the pioneers, at least this side of the water, between the UK and Ireland, for making a proper rugby podcast, making a good banter and good crack. So they were great. They were just sitting on the stage, having yarns, talking about their careers. Jim Hamilton, he used to play for Scotland. So they both were very, very humble in that they didn't have a million caps between them and didn't score 100 tries between them, but they were still, a part of the narrative of those teams and had very funny anecdotes. So it was great to see that. There was Raffles and there was also Bernard Jackman. He was up there giving a few yarns of his own, which was great. And who I didn't expect to be there was actually the Munster coach, Clayton McMillan. It was great to see him in person. They brought him up on the stage, talked to him, asking him questions about what's it like living in Ireland now. He's brought his family over. So he's living here in Ireland, and that transition and just a little bit about the team and where they are. Obviously, he said that we hit a few speed bumps in the last couple of games, but he says he's enjoying his time in Munster, and we definitely want to keep him. So it was great to see that and his support for the club. So yeah, it was really great to see all the guys out there. And then there was also a jersey that was auctioned that actually a friend of mine had ended up getting. There was no contest really. It was one of those auctions for a jersey. It was the Six Nations Grand Slam jersey from 2023 that was all signed by all the players on the squad. And it was kind of one of those bids where it already had a pre-bid. So it was kind of dead silence once the bid was announced. And then my friend just went up 50 euros and got it. So he didn't have much of a contest, but good for him. And it's a lovely framed jersey. So yeah, it's a nice way to end the night. So yeah, that was the Rugby Pod coming to Limerick in the Radisson. Just before I finish, I'd like to say a special thank you to Mark from Inside Rugby with Mark. This is a guy I've been watching really ever since kind of he started doing his videos. He's been a YouTuber for rugby for the last few years. He's a Kiwi living in Cancun in Mexico, and he just loves his rugby. Very passionate about it. It's a great show, and he's always kind of walking around this beautiful landscapes in the background. It's always just constantly beautiful weather in Mexico there. It makes you just say, oh my God, I wish I was there. So he just has his take on rugby. It's all about spreading the game for him, all about the fans. So I sent him a message after I did a few episodes and saying, will you please check out the channel? And we got to talking, and he said, I'm doing my United Rugby Fans channel. It's a new channel of his. Would you like to be on it? So I said, yes, absolutely. Thank you. So I'm going to put the link in the description on this video. Please do check it out. It was great. It was just a sit down with Mark for the best part of an hour, just talking about, rugby in Ireland, growing up with the Six Nations, being an expat abroad, and then watching rugby with, other foreigners for the first time that really love their rugby, like South Africans and New Zealanders. So, and then just about the Irish games, the November tests, where are Ireland now? What's the future holding? What's it looking like? So it was great. It's one thing kind of sitting here and dictating my opinion on rugby, but it's another when you have that nice kind of flowing conversation with someone else who clearly loves the game a lot. So thanks again to Mark for that opportunity and his advice. So it was great. So that is the rugby at the moment. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment if you like. What did you think about these games that just happened last weekend? How do you think they're going to go this weekend? We'll talk to you again soon. Enjoy your rugby. Thanks.